Welcome to Mythos AI, your source for Cliff's Notes on complex subjects. Join Anna and Phil for yet another engaging conversation.
Ever find yourself scrolling through those reviews, trying to figure out if that new phone is actually worth the hype or if that movie everyone keeps raving about is really worth your precious time?
We've all been there. And today's deep dive, well, it's all about a tool we've come to rely on, even if we don't always recognize its name.
Imagine this. You're on a quiz show, the lights are bright, that clock's ticking down, and you hear.
This widely used psychometric scale, named after its creator, measures people's attitudes, opinions, or perceptions by asking them to respond to a series of statements with levels of agreement or disagreement. Typically consisting of 5 or 7 points, it is commonly used in survey research to gauge respondent sentiment. What is the name of this scale?
Tough one, huh? Well, it turns out somebody in that quiz show audience, they kind of froze, drew a total blank. Maybe it was the pressure, maybe they just had a brain fart.
But it got me thinking, how many of us actually know the answer?
It's the Likert Scale.
See, the Likert Scale, and I bet you've come across it a lot more than you realize.
Oh, absolutely. It's everywhere. And it's not just about ticking boxes on a survey, though it definitely involves that.
So it's more than a simple yes or no.
Right. Think of it this way. It's about understanding how strongly someone feels about something.
So instead of do you like this product, it's more like how much do you love or hate it?
Exactly. You get it. And believe it or not, this whole idea, this way of measuring things, it actually goes back to the 1930s. This Quizzypedia source we've been digging into, it mentions this guy, Likert, came up with it.
Back then, if a company wanted to know if folks liked their new whatchamacallit, they basically had to just, guess.
Pretty much. So Likert's idea was pretty revolutionary at the time. Hey, he realized that you could actually measure the intensity of someone's opinion instead of just if they had one.
Makes sense, though, right? I mean, there's a big difference between someone saying, yeah, that new phone's all right, and someone practically camping out in front of the store to get their hands on one.
100%. And that's what the Likert scale lets you capture, that level of enthusiasm, or lack thereof.
So how does it usually work?
Think of your typical 5-point scale. You got your strongly disagree, your disagree, a nice neutral, neither agree nor disagree in the middle, then over to agree, and finally, strongly agree.
Ah, okay. So it's not just if you like something, but how MSCH.
Boom. You got it.
I'm picturing this now. You're shopping online, you see a product with like hundreds of 5-star reviews. Chances are those reviews are based on some kind of Likert scale.
Yep.
Knowing that, well, it kind of helps you understand why those stars actually carry weight. You know what I mean? They reflect this whole range of opinions, not just a simple thumbs up or thumbs down.
Exactly. And what's cool is this isn't limited to just product reviews. This Quizzypedia thing mentions it's used for tons of stuff. Market research, figuring out if employees are happy, even in psychology. It's everywhere.
So companies can use this to figure out if they need to tweak their products, or employers can get a handle on how their teams are actually feeling.
Right. And it's not just about collecting data for the sake of it. It's about using that data to make actual decisions, to understand what people want and need, and hopefully to make things a bit better. And that's something that impacts all of us, whether we realize it or not.
So we've established this Likert scale is everywhere, right? Like it's helping us make sense of all sorts of stuff, from those reviews we were talking about to like how happy people are at their jobs. But is anything, Evan, really that simple? I mean, there's got to be some downsides too, don't you think?
Oh, absolutely. You're right to be a bit skeptical. I mean, the Likert scale, it's a great tool and all, but like anything, it's got its limits.
Yeah, and our Quizzypedia episode actually talks about some of those limitations. They even mention something called central tendency bias, which honestly sounds kind of intimidating. What's that all about?
It's actually not as complicated as it sounds. Basically, it just means that people, well, they tend to kind of gravitate towards those middle options on a Likert scale, especially if they're not really sure, or maybe they just want to, avoid any extremes.
So instead of going all out with a strongly disagree or strongly agree, they just play it safe with a neutral agree.
Exactly. It's like, when you're asked to rate something, and you don't want to come across as too harsh, but you're also not over the moon about it either. So what do? You just pick that middle option.
Ah, I see. Like when you're filling out one of those customer feedback surveys and you just kind of click satisfied for everything, even though you were only like truly happy with maybe half the things they asked about.
Exactly. And the thing is, that whole tendency to kind of hug the middle ground, it can really skew the data, especially if a lot of people are doing it, It might make something seem more average or neutral than it really is.
So it's like we're missing out on valuable info because everyone's so afraid of those strong opinions. Like we're not getting the full story, are we?
Precisely. It's like, think about it like trying to understand a whole song based on like just the chorus. You get the main idea maybe, but you're missing the verses, the bridge, all those parts that really bring the whole thing to life.
That's a great analogy. And thinking about different perspectives, that kind of reminds me of another thing the Quizzypedia folks talked about, cultural differences. Because what might be considered a strong opinion in one culture could be like totally different somewhere else, right?
Oh, absolutely. And even something as seemingly straightforward as a quote-unquote neutral response, well, that can be interpreted in a ton of different ways, depending on the cultural context.
So if a company's trying to figure out like global customer satisfaction, they can't just rely on a standard Likert scale, can they? They'd need to take into account all of those cultural differences to make sure they're actually understanding what people are trying to tell them.
Exactly. It's a good reminder that even though we're talking about numbers and scales and all that, at the end of the day, we're really trying to understand human experiences, which are, let's face it, pretty complex and definitely varied.
Yeah, it's like those optical illusions where, you can look at the same image but see two totally different things depending on your perspective. And this actually reminds me of something else they mentioned on the Quizzypedia episode, how the Likert scale itself is kind of evolving. It's not just about those old school agree or disagree statements anymore. Apparently, there are all sorts of new and interesting versions popping up.
That's right. I mean, think about it. People are busy. They want things to be fast and engaging, especially online. So naturally, surveys are trying to keep up.
So are we talking like emojis instead of words? Visual scales, maybe? I can definitely see how that'd be way more appealing. Especially these days. It's like, who's got time to read a whole sentence when a smiley face can sum it all up, right?
Right. And some researchers are even going beyond that. They're experimenting with like images, even sounds, trying to make surveys way more immersive, more engaging.
That's pretty wild. But it also makes you wonder, does changing up the format like that, does it mess with the data? Can a thumbs up emoji really capture the same level of nuance as, say, a 5-point scale?
That's the million-dollar question, right? There's definitely a trade-off there. I mean, on the one hand, these snazzier formats, they have the potential to make surveys less intimidating, more appealing, especially to, say, younger generations who are used to, well, a more visual, immediate way of interacting. And that could lead to more people actually participating, maybe even more honest answers, who knows. But on the flip side, we've got to be careful not to oversimplify things to the point where we lose that important depth of information.
It's like trying to, I don't know, summarize a whole movie with just a few emojis. You might get the general vibe, but you're going to miss a lot of the plot points.
Exactly. And that's actually why more and more researchers are saying it's all about balance. The Quizzypedia episode actually touched on this too. Even with the best, most well-designed Likert scale, sometimes you just need more.
So it's about finding that sweet spot, getting those quick, easy-to-digest data points, but then also, like, digging a bit deeper, trying to understand the why behind those numbers, right?
100%. Likert scales, they're a great starting point, for sure. But at the end of the day, they're just one piece of the puzzle.
And that actually leads me to my final thought for everyone today. Imagine you're designing a survey, right? And you want to get beyond those simple agree or disagree responses. What's that one open-ended question you'd add? That one that really gets people thinking, that helps you truly understand what's shaping their opinions? Something to ponder, folks. Because whether it's a 5-star review, one of those employee satisfaction surveys we talked about, or even just trying to figure out where your friends stand on something, being able to really decipher those layers of opinion, well, that's key. So next time you come across a Likert scale, just remember, there's often a whole lot more to the story than meets the eye. Until next time, keep asking those insightful questions and happy diving.
Thanks for listening to Mythos AI. Stay tuned for more concise insights. And remember to hit the like button and subscribe for future episodes.